Welcome to another session of Ecosystem Engage, the Not So Daily Show. Today I'm joined by Sopnendu Mohanty, who is the Chief FinTech Officer for the Monetary Authority of Singapore, Singapore's central bank and the regulator. And we're going to have some fantastic discussions around the implications of the pandemic on the FinTech community, the financial services community as a whole, and eventually how the FinTech community can help with the socio-economic recovery process for us, not just in Singapore, but with other markets that are very reliant on FinTech for greater inclusion of their economic growth. So Sopnendu, welcome, and it's a pleasure to have you again.
Likewise.
So let's first begin with how you're coping with this, Sopnendu, first of all, because you have to look after yourself before you look after others. So
no, I'm having a very good time. I must admit that my productivity has increased, one. Second thing is my ability to reach out to my constituent, which is the FinTech community, has perhaps increased many times. I would say from 8 to 8 every day, at least 2 to 3 hours I spend time in talking to the community, trying to understand the problem. So I'm more deeper, well connected now than before, because now the issues are quite stark there. So it's good for me to understand those better. So definitely the engagement has increased a lot. And I must say, I think it has just defined the way we can work better if we need to. I'm a big follower of the need for sustainability in our life. And there's so much of traffic we created for something we could have avoided. And when we go back to normal, I think we have to be a different level. We don't need to spend so much time on the road. We can work efficiently out of home, spend more time with the family, spend a good time in office, very productive time in office if we need to meet somebody and colleagues in the office. But I think generally speaking, this will reshape to more productive, more green, and more sustainable way of life.
And you're certainly, I suppose, enjoying Singapore a lot more, Sopnendu, because you don't, from my recent memory, I don't think you were spending more than a couple of days at a stretch in Singapore. I've seen you travel in and out of countries on the same day through Singapore.
Yes.
So I'm sure you're enjoying that, and I'm sure your family is enjoying that as well.
Absolutely. I think I'm enjoying the time here, but still my heart goes out to the frontline people who are working very hard to keep us safe. I think we should be always thankful. The reason you and me can talk is somebody out there working very hard to make us safe. I think we should all be thankful to them.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right, and I think that's a great way to segue into the next point I have, because I think in these times the most important thing is strong leadership, but that leadership needs to come with the empathy that you've just demonstrated, Sopnendu. So I think the community definitely appreciates that. Now, clearly the FinTech community has a lot of startups, right? And they will be struggling, and there must be a significant impact of the pandemic on the FinTech community. You have recently announced some significant support initiatives through the MAS and external partnerships. Can you tell us more about what you're doing in that space? Because we know that there is a lot of activity.
Sure. Amit, the question you asked about this package, or the rescue package, or the response package we had for the FinTech community as part of our response to COVID-19. So let me make it easier for the audience to understand how we structured our response. So if you think about when the crisis comes to this level we are talking, the startup community have 2 or 3 big issues. One is the cash flow issue. They get into a cash flow issue because for various reasons, rental payments, paying salary for the staff, and which got accentuated because there's a lot of anxiety sales process get disrupted. So that's the next part. The sales process get disrupted. And the third part is the investors who have committed to fund these startups also start holding back their commitment. They get worried. They start re-looking at their portfolio and they hold back some of the powders they're supposed to fire the startups with. So these are three big problem startups grappled with moment the crisis hit the ecosystem. So for each of them, we did few things. For the cash flow challenge, we introduced a grant which allows startups to offset their salary expense. There was a job subsidy support from the Singapore government, and there was an interesting twist to the salary subsidy, which I will come back later because Dr. Raghuram Rajan wrote a report or he wrote an article and he talks about the role of grant in crisis. So that interesting twist to our grant was that if you sitting at home, if you train yourself for every 1 hour online training, I give you $15 salary subsidy. And that's an interesting twist because we just we did not want to give this money like that without creating an opportunity for the same people when they come out of crisis to be more upskilled. Yeah. I think that's the idea there. Now, coming back to Dr. Raghuram Rajan's article, he talked about there's the issue with grants when they are disbursed in crisis. And what happens is that it creates something called a zombie economy, because you are feeding people with cash and they're in coma, and when they come out, the company they work for may not be relevant anymore. So you are actually inadvertently funding value depleting companies post COVID-19. So there are twin challenges. First thing, people are in coma because they are sitting at home doing nothing. And second thing, the companies who are going to take benefit may not be relevant as they come out of this crisis. By creating a grant which is attached to a training incentive gets us away from that problem, because you're not in coma, you're active, you're getting trained, you're upskilling yourself, and you're getting more relevant as you come back. That leads to the second structure of the grant. We funded a scheme which allows startups to claim a certain portion of their sales cost, or a certain portion of their services through a digital acceleration grant. And this grant is essentially that if I'm a startup, if I'm going to pitch you and you're a bank and you buy my software or buy my services, $120,000 worth of that I will get from the government, which means you as a bank get incentive from me to buy a service from the startup. So that's the structure. Now that also goes back to Dr. Raghuram Rajan's point that we did not fund value depleting companies. We are funding companies who have a value for you in crisis too. So that's a value addition company getting funded. So you're creating incentives based on purpose, based on relevance, not general spreading money or throwing money to people. And the third point was around investment. We work with the private companies, we work with private sectors, and AMTD came together with us as part of the program, and they set up something called AMTD Asean Solidarity Fund. This is for the startups who are looking for short-term liquidity in terms of debt or convertible notes, and so that they can get over that 9 to 10 months of crisis they may have on the cash flow side. So broadly, these are the big incentives we introduced to the market. There are other things, but I thought these are the main ones we thought of sharing with you. But the most important takeaway from this whole thing, Amit, is around don't give grant without thinking about what comes out of this crisis. It's very important for us to keep our talent active, keep our talent upskilled, keep our talent selling products which are relevant as we come out of the crisis.
I could not agree more on what you've just shared, Sopnendu. I think the whole concept of grants as an entitlement doesn't work,
Mhm.
right?
Yes,
It needs to be channeled in a way that drives more productivity
yes,
and helps enhance society as a whole, right? So and the industry and community. So I think kudos to you guys, and I know that it wasn't loose change that you put together with the program with AMTD as well. So over and above the
yes.
government support structure.
Yeah, it is a $50 million grant, and the government grants also quite generous. $125 million grant worth of digital acceleration grant. Yeah, as long as you are doing something. If you're a startup, you got a client, I'm going to help you to do a better sales. And Amit, I almost forgot to mention that we also opened up the API exchange platform. Now during crisis, people are operating from home. It was impossible for them to do a face-to-face selling. It's a good luck for Singapore to have a platform like API Exchange, because that allowed startups to get into the platform, talk to their client, bring them to the platform, start selling the product to the platform, build prototypes, build POCs. In fact, we have a grant which allows you to claim up to $80,000 worth of cash if you do a POC out of the Epic's platform for a client in ASEAN market or any market. So that also other way to look at how a platform was introduced, and we made it free for any Singapore-based fintech to have access to the platform. So again, improving the sales process, but you have to sell something which is meaningful.
Yeah,
You are not going to get money because
yeah. And look, Apex is a big discussion I want to have with you, Sopnendu. I think we're going to come to that, and I think
yes,
it's been revolutionary for the fintech community. So we do want to talk about that. But before we get into that, I want to speak to you specifically about a couple of areas. So with what we're going through at the moment in this pandemic, fintech, I believe, has the opportunity to be at the forefront of bringing change. And so I wanted to get your thoughts, because I know you're very passionate about this subject. I want to get your thoughts on where can fintech and digital services as a whole play a significant role, or take the opportunity or seize the moment, as you'd call it, to shape the socio-economic healing process, not just in Singapore, but in other markets as well.
yes. Amit, great question. I would split my response into two parts. One is I spoke about in many forum already about this, that there are two kind of fintechs. One is the B2C fintech and the B2B fintechs. So the business to business fintechs are going to have their moment of life, because we are absolutely sure, and you read any articles today, everybody talks about low touch, high tech economy going forward. This social distancing will continue to stay. People will travel with a lot of caution. Businesses would love to be more digital because they don't want to get into the same crisis again. So in this conditions is a perfect breeding ground for fintechs to solve the digital gap we have in our economic infrastructure. And that's an opportunity, lifetime opportunity. B2B fintechs, if they have matured product, they're going to get into that space big time. But the second part of your question, the socio-economic opportunity fintech can bring now, is around a story which came out in Financial Express or Indian Express by a dear friend of mine, Gautam Bhardwaj and Sanjay Jain. And they wrote an article that there was a huge migration from urban India to rural India during the crisis. And one of the reasons they pointed out was these workers who have spent years and years in Mumbai, in Delhi, in Calcutta, in Chennai, they have not thought about to save money. So during crisis, they were stuck in large cities, which was lockdown,
Yeah.
with very little opportunity to access money, and they were struggling to get by every day. if they had savings product, if they were thinking about financial literacy, if they were thinking about pension savings, I think they could have survived for a couple of months by dipping into a pension plan. For all the 10 years they have worked, they could have saved enough to earn during a crisis like this to live by till the market opens up. Not having a financial product like pension plan clearly showed that there was a gap which should have been fulfilled, but we did not do it. And this is a great example where fintechs were very good in creating products which are suitable for low income group, which are suitable for socially challenged people or economically challenged people, and create an opportunity for them to think about financial literacy, think about how to save small money and put it into a regular pension contribution, how to think about micro savings, how to think about micro insurance, very small ticket money. But these are the small ticket money which you can use to be part of a product which fintech can provide. And a crisis like that will help you to understand the good choices you made through the last 10 years of your life. Now, not having that, you saw what happened. It is just a unbearable crisis in India because of this challenge, or as I'll say, non-comprehensive financial services still exist in many markets in spite of technology advancing so much. Same story, many of the market. So fintechs, if they want to prove that they are for greater good, here's the opportunity. Go and build great product, but build product for everybody.
And on that note, we have seen, knowingly or unknowingly, companies that have grown exponentially in the last couple of decades through digital. We have seen that they have grown predominantly through, as I said earlier, knowingly or unknowingly, making a significant impact on people. So digital transformation has to impact people. It has to be for that higher impact, that greater purpose, right? So tell me, Sopnendu, you're quite well known outside of Singapore as well. Perhaps you're aware, right? Lots of other markets, whether they're mature markets or emerging markets. I know you've been involved with initiatives, in markets like India and Africa. You advise the Gates Foundation on financial inclusion, and I know you've been at this for the last couple of years. Have you seen some change that you can showcase and highlight that sets a good example for people to learn from?
On the financial inclusion side?
Yes.
I think I would say plenty of examples, starting from the famous M-Pesa, which we saw in Kenya. In India, of course, the Aadhaar infrastructure and what came on top of Aadhaar infrastructure is, to me, legendary. Very recently, in fact, I would say it's a great example where a system like that, a company like that was there in Bangladesh called bKash, BKASH.
Yes.
bKash, during COVID-19 crisis, when the migrant laborers were struggling to remit back home money, they came as a godsend opportunity for them. They were receiving almost significant portion of the remittance from migrant workers from overseas to back to their home before crisis, during Eid, during the month of Ramadan, and for the Eid celebration. Because they had a very simple system, because they had a simple API which the wallet can consume, they made the process of transfer so easy. All the remittance were flowing through that platform. And having something like bKash was a godsend opportunity for dealing with a crisis of such magnitude, where people are struggling to send money back home from overseas. Yeah. An example which came real during such crisis. There are examples around in Asian markets around insurance. There are companies which are started looking at insuring very small ticket insuring events like your agriculture crops, a small risk associated with transitory goods and services companies. So there are this huge set of opportunity in this insurance space. Being a part of a central bank regulator, I always worry about picking one winner,
Yeah.
but but there are plenty examples, unless they're like national infrastructure, which I can quote. But generally speaking, there are plenty. But to me, the standout has been companies like Bcash, who have truly shown that the value is real in a crisis like this.
Yeah. And I mean, to be fair, I think, Sopnendu, you have provided a great platform where companies like Bcash and various other examples are showcased, right? And that brings me to the next subject, and I've been waiting eagerly for that, and I'm sure a lot of the viewers would be as well. The Singapore FinTech Festival, right? It's 60,000 plus people last year from across the world. Run by the Monetary Authority of Singapore, of course, in partnership with ABS and SingX. But content, speakers, arguably the best you would see. I saw pictures of you on a billboard at the NASDAQ billboard on Times Square. I think that was probably the day that you were competing directly with the heads of state in the US as well in terms of visibility.
NASDAQ was too kind on me.
No, but look, I think you've built a great platform that not only allows globally fintechs, insurtechs, financial institutions, industry, communities to come and engage, collaborate, innovate, and also, of course, look at fundraising opportunities, right? Outside of that, you've also slipped in some excellent socio-economic issues that need to be addressed, and you brought those to the fore as well. Last year was the financial inclusion, sustainability, lots of high impact areas. Now, of course, as Ecosystem, we were privileged to have been the thought leadership partners, and we saw firsthand, up close, how much went into what your team did to pull this off. So now I know when you started this, it seems like it started many years ago, but it's only about 4 years old, right? And when you started this, I know your goal was not to run an events business, but you did this with a purpose. So love to hear your story. To get your story of Singapore FinTech Festival, what it means, and what's your vision.
Oh, it's a long story, but I'll try to get across a shorter version of the story. Now, of course, as you made a comment that as a regulator, we are not a business of running event. In fact, that was the first question asked to me when we discussed why we are organizing event when there are plenty of organizers out there who can do an event for us. So my view was that we are not going to organize an event. We're going to bring together people to celebrate success. And we should be open to any ideas. Anybody who wants to share success should be there. And we should start with something as abstract possible with no clear agenda and see where it goes. So almost nothing in our mind, what seems to be an organized conference. And the team came back to me with a proposal to do less than few hundred people, that too within MAS, very small one. And I did not push back. I thought, okay, let it go. And I suggested maybe we should invite some people from outside. And I had this colleague of mine who no longer works with me, but still with the agency, is working at a different government agency, Roy Teo. Very bright chap and very passionate about what he does. So I got him to help me in this program, and I knew he's a super competent chap, and he will pull it off. So got Roy and told him that start putting some public narrative that we are going to do such thing. Will people be interested to join us? And Roy comes back and tells boss, we can do little more than 1,000. okay, let's go with that. And I'm actually discounting a lot of things happened between that and this number. It a lot of hardship to get in that number. And but Roy came with a good idea, saying that we should rope in ABS, the Bankers Association of Singapore, and Mrs. Ong, who runs it, will be a great partner. And and she's a lovely lady. She's 74 now, perhaps that's her age. She calls herself the senior most digital lady in Singapore. So I go to her and I talk to Mrs. Ong, saying that, look, I need your help. We need to do an event. Will you be interested to come and join with us? And she looks at me, stops, I'm going to do it, but not a big one. Okay, we stay 2,000, something like that. And we went out. Then Mrs. Song calls me, Sobs, this number is increasing, you got to stop it. And I kept on delaying that response, and it hit 3,000. And Mrs. Song calls me and says that, Sobs, you promised me this will not be a big one. We have got 3,000. You got to stop it now. And that now was an eventful day for all of us. It was the day where the US election was about to decide who will be the next president after President Obama. And I told Mrs. Song, nobody cares about Singapore FinTech Festival today. We'll keep it open, but we will put a notice and get it down tonight. I think in Singapore, noontime, the US election was announced. And for some spurious correlation, the number of signups hit close to 7,000, 8,000. I think I told Mr. Song, let it go. We have crossed our number way big than what we thought. We will end up with something we can live with, but it is way beyond us. Let it go as big it can. And the first event ended up with some 11,000 people. So that's how FinTech Festival started, big number. And from every year onwards, it has become double. And we are now 60,000 in 4 years' time. But the reason why Singapore FinTech Festival in hindsight, because we not planned for it, was because we made it very open. And we ensured that there is no VIP treatment in that festival. Anybody with great idea has a place in that festival. There's an open platform. You may not have any history of your success, but you have done something very well last 6 months. You can come and speak to a crowd of 5,000 people. And it's that open. So we created a format which allowed people to express themselves. We were quite bold in picking up topics which were not popular in many conference circuits. And the more important part is that what I think we did together, and I'm very thankful my buddy Roy to be part of that whole discussion, we will make it an affordable conference. And think about it. During that time, I'm talking 2015-16, most of the growing fintech, new fintechs were coming from emerging market, Africa, Vietnam, Cambodia, Myanmar, Indonesia, Philippines. These people cannot afford to travel to meet thought leaders for a conference. You pick any top-notch conference. It's expensive. It is expensive to travel. It is expensive to join this conference, and they were not having access to this huge network of people coming together. We made a pledge, we'll make it affordable for somebody from Cambodia, somebody from Vietnam. And we priced in such a way that they should be able to travel to Singapore and survive 5 days with less than 1,000 Singapore dollar. And that was our goal as a price point by which we can attract the best talent, a lifetime opportunity once in a year to come to Singapore and interact with every possible bright brain together and go back and inspire their own people back at home and come back with better idea next year. So this price point, inclusivity, bringing people together was the big part of the success of FinTech Festival. And you are part of that whole thing. You know that how open we are when it comes to picking topic, choosing partners. We are quite liberal in anybody with good ideas are welcome to come here.
Yeah, no, look, we certainly saw that. And It has been a tremendous journey and learning for me and my teams as well. And I can't express what a great experience it has been, not just as a run-up to the event, but the 3 days on the day, on site. Those 3 days, have not seen something of that scale and the engagement at that level. So it was fantastic. And I know
Yes,
in terms of the impact that you're making with the FinTech Festival, Sopnendu, it goes beyond the FinTech community. It goes beyond Singapore. We've already discussed that. I mean, you've had participation from various heads of states at the FinTech Festival. I have not seen heads of states ever participate in a technology event, but you've had you've had a number of them participate. But you're also making an impact, outside of the commercial realms of fintech. And we've talked about some of the examples you shared, but last year you also went into Africa with the Asian Afro FinTech Festival. What drove that for you?
It was about the same passion for inclusivity. We wanted to take this story out of Singapore to Africa because we knew that the next 10 years or 20 years, the best ideas or the future ideas will come from African continent. And if we are there now, be part of that story, I think we can work together with our colleagues from Africa, with our friends from Africa, to build a momentum for Africa to be the next big contributor to the world of fintech. And there's no better way to go and partner with Kenya, one of the leading countries out there who are good in fintechs, good in financial services, very good in thinking about innovation, to come together and start an Afro-Asian festival. My view is that that festival partnership will grow, and that will become the center point of once in a year event in Africa, which will be a platform where the Africa story will be told year after year. And that becomes part of the global connectivity we are bringing every year in November to Singapore. So the idea is to build an Africa platform by partnering with Africa, and hopefully down the line have something similar in Latin America, another emerging market. The next decade should be something they should look forward to, and hopefully we have something similar in Latin America, and then eventually end of the year join in Singapore for the big gala gathering of bright people who wants to contribute meaningfully to the world. So that's the idea, bring more people to this whole ecosystem.
Well, I think you've definitely addressed both ends of it. You're finding ways to solve problems, but you also know how to throw a big party, bringing everyone together. So
and it's important, Amit. I think people discount that because these startups, whether from Africa or from US or from Latin America, they work very hard. They spend every day fighting a battle.
Yeah,
they are struggling to raise money. They're knocking at doors of every possible client so that they can be heard. I think as a part of the fintech global leadership, it is our duty is to bring them together to a platform over 3-4 days, help them to succeed. I think that's the responsibility we have, and that's what we're trying to do through the festival.
So this desire to create a level of equity for everyone to be able to play at the global stage based on their capabilities and what they bring. Was that your biggest driver for Apex? Because I'm going to talk about that now. The Apex platform. Tell us about
Apex platform. If you think about Amit, most of our product line, which we have done over 5 years, the origin of those ideas are very funny and very interesting, and they're nothing to do with what they're now. Same story like Singapore FinTech Festival. A small little program became a runaway success because we had something fundamentally good in our construct. A similar story for the API Exchange platform. This was at the sideline of 2017 FinTech Festival. One of the senior officers from IFC, the World Bank Group, was trying to meet me, almost pestered me to a state where I said, look, I'm so busy, caught up with the whole festival. I'm really having tough time to schedule something with you. But we somehow caught up in a coffee, over a coffee for half an hour before I took a flight. Went back to States or wherever, I think so back to States. And during that discussion, he asked certain question, I responded, and he went back to the States and he calls me after a month saying that he's ready to cooperate on this idea. Actually, I had forgotten that whole thing. What exactly I spoke.
I
Long story short.
I want to interrupt. Sorry, Sopnendu, I'm going to interrupt you on this one because I want to highlight, and I've engaged enough with you and been in enough meetings with you. You discuss a lot of things, but I also picked, you don't forget them, your follow through. I wanted to highlight that your follow through is exceptional. Actually, it's one of the things that I shared with your team as well. I said, I am amazed at how much he retains and follows through. So you might have forgotten it, but it might have been a momentary phase. Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No. So I was like, wow, what did I speak about, and why he's so interested? Again, interesting happened in between, only for private talk. It was an idea which I was discussing with the IFC officer, that one of the challenges emerging market banks have today, they have their ability to extend credit to those markets is severely limited by their own technology capabilities. And now we have fintechs coming to the space and trying to do that, or trying to serve that community through technology and good ideas, business models. If IFC World Bank wants to see this bank succeed, rural bank, credit union banks, small banks, tier 4 banks, you got to think about a method or a process by which a bank from a small town can adopt this cool technology in a way they are comfortable with, in a way they understand the power of fintech, in a way they can transit from where they are today to something modern, and then the capacity for them to do an expanded, a better financial service becomes a reality. So that was an idea, and he was so fascinated with the idea. He said, "We'll come together, let's start this project." We started this project. We put together a system, or an architecture, which essentially is about putting a development platform on cloud where a bank can replicate their legacy system in such a manner that the fintech can come to this infrastructure, create a prototype for the banks to get educated what this tool can do for them. Of course, there are a lot of work to be done to actually go and integrate later on. But at least the first step is understand the power of fintech, discover this fintech, do a prototype before you can go there. As it happens, because I'm extremely lucky in that respect, that I put this picture together, but I didn't have all the necessary engineering talent in myself to build it. So I went and inspired a bunch of people who didn't charge a single money to come together and start putting a prototype for me, absolutely free of cost. They were passionate about what we're doing, and that led to the birth of AFIN, and subsequently, which is called the Asean Financial Innovation Network. And subsequently, we put together a platform which Prime Minister Modi and Senior Minister Thurman inaugurated at the 2018 Singapore FinTech Festival.
That's right.
But the product did not take off immediately after that. So what happened that we went and announced this product in 2019. We went to Myanmar to showcase this product, and we spent 3 days there with 20 odd banks in that city, and we took some 80 or 800 plus, and 80 was the summary one, hundreds of feedback why this platform sucks. And this is coming from a market which is still not up that mark when it comes to digitization. So we are taking a great platform, so-called in our brain, in our mind, and we went to a market where the digital capability is still undergoing shift, and they told me the platform sucks. We could have made two choices there. We could have told ourselves, look, we went to a market, they don't understand technology, so forget about it, let's continue the path. Or we can make a choice that, you know what, if that doesn't work for them, it doesn't work for anybody.
Yeah.
So we took the second feedback, second choice seriously, and we went back to the drawing board and rebuilt that whole product. And today I can say I'm extremely proud. This product can digitize or help in the process of digitization for the bank if for a hypothetical bank, if it runs on a spreadsheet also. We can help them to digitize faster. The platform has matured, it has scaled, it is engineered very beautifully. In fact, as we speak, we are hosting one of the largest hackathon for all the central bank called G20 Tech Sprint. And this is as complex as it can get when it comes to do prototyping, uh, piloting any product on a complex platform like this. So long journey, but worth taking. I think my moment of happiness came when during COVID-19, this became almost an essential tool for fintechs in Singapore to do their sales process.
Yeah.
There's no other tool in the market today for any fintech anywhere in the world to go to a client and tell them, I can work with you now. This is the only platform available where you can do a proper sales.
So if I can help, drive a discussion around how this can benefit some of our viewers and fintechs. So it allows the commercial engagement. But I think the biggest piece is providing the APIs to run trials between banks and fintechs and so on. So I completely agree. I mean, in these times of social distancing, people are not going to travel. We don't know when we're going to travel next. This must be arguably the lifeline potentially for fintechs to try and keep engaged with their potential customers. Would it not?
Absolutely, absolutely. And it also it's a strange situation we are in, Amit, now. A lot of fintechs I'm discovering are not ready with the product, and this platform somehow brings it out strongly, and you know where you stand. Because if your product is not ready, it will get exposed because this platform forces you to do something.
Yeah.
It forces you to talk to some bank system and create a prototype which cannot be just done on the side. It's a live platform. It also puts a lot of pressure on the fintechs to step up so that their product becomes scalable, consumable in many. Because remember, you are selling to a bank or insurance company, and these companies are all regulated by regulations which also govern tech outsourcing. You cannot go and sell a bank a half-baked product because the banks are committed to strong outsourcing guidelines by the regulators. And they're committed to the regulators for tech risk management. So they can't just go and sell. This is not some snacks you are selling to somebody. It's a serious commitment to these banks when you do some discussion. So you got to have a product which is consumable by the banks, so that they don't get in trouble with their respective regulators.
Yeah. And talking about banks, just moving to another topic that's been in the news for the last 6 months with respect to Singapore's digital banks. And we know that there were about 21 applicants, and you've got 5 licenses for retail and wholesale. Tell us about that. I mean, what is what should we expect as businesses and consumers with these digital banks coming into play in Singapore?
I think this question was around this digital bank. I think one of the most popular question I get, why is why Singapore waited for a digital bank license after Hong Kong or many other market announced? And my answer was very simple. If you think about it, we started talking about digital bank license after we got our national infrastructure for digital economy ready. We got our Mindfo, which is our eKYC process. You can use Mindfo, our national infrastructure, for doing electronic KYC and do customer onboarding faster. You can use our Pay Now to move money, 3 clicks, 0 cost. So it is important for us to build the national rails before we tell banks or if you start issuing digital bank license. Now think about it. If you put a digital bank license and your processes and infrastructure are still paper-based, you defeat the purpose of issuing a digital bank license. So we should have an ability as a country, when I issue a digital bank license, the recipient should have policies and infrastructure which allows them to be truly digital. So we had to spend some time getting it ready. So once we got that piece done, I think the time was appropriate for Singapore to issue intent to at least issue an intent to issue license on digital bank side. Now the question is, what they're going to solve? I think in 2 parts. There are still some unmet, especially in the wholesale bank side. There are still unmet needs. SMEs still need access to credit, digital bank license with good models and with their own ecosystem and with their own plugins they have in different third-party services. They can be efficient in extending credit to SMEs and those segment quite well. For young millennials and for high transactory accounts, products, definitely digital bank can think about innovative product and compete in this market. But my biggest argument on digital banks will be that how do they create a comprehensive product set because they use technology which is remarkable, which is cost effective, and can they translate that efficiency and the cost back to the product, and hence it becomes far more affordable, far more comprehensive, and far more expanded to people without any segment bias. If they can crack that puzzle, I think they are going to succeed. Of course, Singapore is not a large market. I'm sure a lot of these people will have a similar aspiration beyond Singapore to run digital banks. And some point in time, when this becomes multi-jurisdiction, the scale is there, this becomes highly relevant or a new construct for the financial sector. But having said that, just to be clear, digital bank people are applying for digital bank should not have a false thinking that the incumbents are not ready. Today, our incumbents are not only ready, they're doing better. They have almost mimicked the virtues of fintech, keeping the trust factor intact. So there'll be real competition, which is good. So nobody should take anyone lightly in this race.
Yeah, and that was going to be my next question. I mean, you look at some of the banks in Singapore. I mean, of course, DBS sort of, holds the flag globally in terms of their ability to drive digital services. But, the other Singaporean banks are not far behind.
Yes.
Where's the additional value add that the digital banks will bring beyond? You started with the fact that you get that question a lot, why Singapore waited beyond the other countries. And, the reason I don't ask you that is because my natural instinctive response or consideration there has been perhaps the need was not as as tremendous in terms of driving those digital services because the incumbents are quite well equipped. So it is going to be a
That is also
competitive
there.
environment.
Yeah, that is also there. And I would say our incumbents are largely providing the uh, needs of our people in Singapore. But we thought that it's good to have competition,
Yes.
but make it meaningful. Get the infrastructure ready so that's a level playing field for everybody.
Yeah. And I liked your point earlier that with the digital banks, they will have to provide the additional value to be competitive with the incumbents as well.
Yes, and the cost structure should be far more. I don't know. I hope it will be far more efficient, and I hope they pass some of this cost benefit to the consumers.
So Sopnendu, I want to kind of close this session on a topic that I know that you've been very passionate about. You've talked about it for over a year now in a number of forums. The whole piece around data and trusted data, and in the current pandemic, we've seen that you have international trade getting impacted in a number of ways, right? You've seen supply chains get impacted. And we know that digital trade is going to play a very, very key role going forward. We know that some countries have already started taking steps in that direction. I know Singapore is, other countries like New Zealand are as well. And so you've talked about this vision you've had about building trusted data corridors between economies to create seamless flow of information, to make for businesses to remove all the friction in their transactions and trade decision-making process. Do you think this is an opportunity for you to accelerate those discussions?
If at all, one thing which will see a serious discussion in my mind will be the trusted data corridor. I have no reasons to believe that this will not be discussed because for every country to come back to recovery mode, they need to think about technology. They need to think about connectivity. What moves with technology and connectivity is data. So the data becomes part of the narrative, whether it's a domestic recovery or an international recovery. So not having a trusted data corridor is out of question. So there will be a dialogue as countries come back to the recovery plan, where they will reach out to countries where they want to establish or re-establish connectivity, and some serious discussion will be on the table about data. And this time, the data discussion will be more around governance, privacy protection, consent, rule of the law, and all the stuff. And these are all the right things to talk about because we've got to protect data for an individual right, for a national sovereign right, and it should be same time interoperable, exchangeable for the greater good of the economic conditions to improve. So yes, the trusted data corridor will become a big part of the response thinking as part of the recovery, and it's not limited to Singapore. It's for every country in this part of the world. I'm sure other part of the world will have same discussion. So very important topic in my mind.
And so what should we expect from you next on this?
So
How do you take bold steps?
I think we already spoke about it. Let's start with that. We spoke about it in the context of global stack or foundational stack. We told that, you know what, for countries to start connecting, four things are required. We got to connect our payment system. We got to find a way to interoperate our identity system. We got to find a way to exchange data among each other for an economic purpose with the powerful consent system assigned to such exchange of data. So we spoke about it last year. We are speaking about it now. We are working with 3 countries on this area. So we'll continue to push this agenda because that's definitely will be very useful to think about recovery post COVID-19. Because without a proper data governance, data exchange, I find it hard to believe that the approach we took before COVID-19 would work effective in this new world.
Couldn't agree more.
So we will move very uh, at a speed and at an intent far more than before.
Well, we look forward to that, and perhaps something to look forward to in the upcoming Singapore FinTech Festival.
Yes, the data will be a big part of the discussion along with green.
And so, what should we expect in terms of the key outcomes that you want to achieve this year from the Singapore FinTech Festival?
Our biggest focus will be because we are in midst of a COVID-19 crisis. Uh, Before the crisis, I was thinking that given this is the fifth year of Singapore FinTech Festival, we will do a bit of anniversary kind of thinking. In fact, this is the 10th year of FinTech because this is the decade we are coming out of the global financial crisis.
Yes.
FinTech took place after global financial crisis. So we are almost a decade away from where we started. So it's 10 years of FinTech, 5 years of Singapore FinTech Festival. We thought we will dedicate this year to celebrate the people who worked hard over the last 10 years to make FinTech what it is today. So we wanted to dedicate this year to those people. So it's a people's conference, and we will bring stories about success, failure, interesting insights which took place over the last 10 years. So that was the big thinking this time. But COVID-19 came in. We didn't anticipate that. So we will retain some of the original thinking, but we're going to pivot to something big this time. We have already started. In fact, in a couple of weeks' time, I think somewhere in June 8th or 9th, we will release a press the Global Accelerator, which is the first part of Singapore FinTech Festival. And this year, we are going to dedicate 100 question, 100 problem statement in the space of green, sustainability, and social good. This will be the big narrative for next 5-10 years. And this time, Singapore Global Accelerator will be focusing on those problem statements with $1 million plus of award money, incentivizing people to participate. So that's part one. Part two, the conference itself will be, in my mind, I don't know, in my mind at least, and I'm going to push my team to think, and they're also thinking already, they know that I'm going to push them more. It'll be bigger than last year, not going to be smaller. Of course, I don't expect 60,000 people to hang out in one place because social distancing will remain for a long period of time. We are thinking creative way by which both physical and digital can be combined, and we can have more distributed space around the world to do this event. So we're coming with some ideas which will make it bigger, more distributed, more connected, and much more fun. So that's the second part. Third part, in terms of topics, we're going to go very deep around the tech behind green, the tech behind sustainability, the tech behind social good. And I want to spend a lot of time this time talking about difficult topics which we don't do it anymore. Pension structures, microinsurance, data, citizen-centric data ownership. How do we connect small, medium enterprise to global community through some network platform? Very topical, very challenging topics. We're going to focus a lot on that because we have to think about three things together. It has to be climate friendly, green, it has to be sustainable, it has to have social outcome. We've got to bring all the three together in narrative. That's the big focus in terms of subject this time, on top of the people celebration and the success celebration and other things we do.
Great objectives, great vision in terms of the outcomes you want to achieve, Sopnendu. I perhaps, and I hope that this crisis brings the opportunity for you to now not bring the world to the Singapore FinTech Festival, but hopefully with the physical and virtual models,
Yes.
take the Singapore FinTech Festival to the world, and make it pervasive in each of those markets that that drive this sector. But look, it has been an exceptional session. I know, and for the benefit of our viewers, I know that we're living with imperfections these days. We've learned to live with it well enough. You know, the internet is not always that great, even in a place like Singapore. And I know we might have had some challenges there, but we decided to keep charging through this session because I think the insights and the narrative that you shared, Sopnendu, I think is inspiring for fintechs and entrepreneurs who are watching this will find it very, very useful. So
thank you for having me.
No, it's been an absolute pleasure, Sopnendu. I don't think you need much of an introduction, and I think the fintechs will find this very, very valuable. And please do remember, just to remind everyone, that the Singapore FinTech Festival is going to be, as big as it was, perhaps bigger this year in different ways. The activities will start soon, as Sopnendu likes to call it. The celebrations will start, and in these difficult times, it is really important to celebrate any success we can. So, Sopnendu, thank you for that. Thank you for your time. I wish you well and stay safe.
Thank you. Same to you.